60 Minutes Rewind.
Even though 125 people were killed in the Pentagon September 11th, there was still something miraculous about that day. The 757 obliterated the first and part of the second floor, but the third, fourth, and fifth floors remained suspended in midair for 35 minutes. Hundreds of people escaped. How is that possible? The answer lies in a partially classified government study of the terrorist bombings that have come before, like Oklahoma City and Khobar Towers. Everything we learned in that project was hidden inside the walls of the Pentagon itself, in anticipation that one day the building would be bombed. You're about to see how they defended the building. But first, hear from a man who experienced the miracle of the Pentagon.
5 minutes before the plane hit, somebody said, "Come over, you got to see what's going on." So I walked over and I was looking at the television. And I walked back to my desk and I called my wife.
John Yates is a civilian security manager in the Pentagon. That day, he was in his office watching the World Trade Center on TV.
And she asked me then to do the rest of my work for the remainder of the day from underneath my desk. So she just said it jokingly, and I joked, and I said, "Yeah, okay, honey, I will." And I walked back over to watch some more of what was going on in New York. And I had just been standing there for just a couple of minutes when the plane hit the building.
What happened?
The sound, it was deafening, absolutely deafening. And I just remembered this bright ball of fire that just went right over my head.
That fire burned 35% of his body. The plane hit directly below his office, but the floor held, giving some, but not all, a chance to live. There were people standing next to you in the room, watching the television, watching what was happening in New York City.
Yes.
What happened to them?
They didn't make it. The lady standing to my left didn't make it.
They were standing right next to you.
Within an arm's length, yes. So why am I here? I don't know. I just don't know.
He's here in part because his floor was reinforced and held up for half an hour. In an astonishing stroke of luck, the terrorists had hit the only section of the Pentagon, the only section designed to resist a terrorist attack.
We had made several modifications to the building as part of that renovation that we think helped save people's lives.
Lee Evey runs a billion-dollar project to renovate the Pentagon. They've been working on it since 1993. The first section was 5 days away from being finished when the terrorists hit it with the 757.
You can start to smell the smoke here in this part of the building.
You can smell the smoke. You can see evidence of smoke damage here and there.
To see how so many escaped, you have to look inside the walls. The renovation project built strength into the 60-year-old limestone exterior with a web of steel beams and columns.
So you have these steel tubes. Again, they start on the first floor, go all the way up to the fifth floor, and all the way through, from floor to floor, we have everything bolted together with horizontal steel as well as the vertical steel. So it's all put together in one strong matrix of steel. Supports, in cases, the windows, and provides tremendous additional strength to the wall.
When the plane hit at 350 miles an hour, the limestone outside shattered. But inside, those shards of stone were caught by a shield of cloth that lines the entire section of the building.
This is a ballistic type cloth. It helps prevent that masonry from perhaps fragmenting and blowing through an area where there are people.
It's essentially a bullet-resistant vest for the building.
That's in fact what they make bullet-resistant vests out of, is the same type of material.
All of this, especially the steel, held up the third, fourth, and fifth floors. They stayed for 35 minutes. You can see them through the smoke, suspended over the hole gouged by the jet. Only after the evacuation did the heat melt the new steel away.
if that area had not been renovated? That wall would have lasted how long?
Looking at the number of columns and support structures that were otherwise completely destroyed, it might have collapsed immediately.
I basically said a silent prayer to myself for the victims, and then in thanks that it hit where it hit.
Lieutenant General Bob Flowers commands the Army Corps of Engineers. The Corps helped design the Pentagon's new protection. The engineers studied past attacks, including the 1983 Marine barracks bombing in Lebanon, Oklahoma City in 1995, the U.S. embassies in East Africa, and the Khobar Towers barracks in Saudi Arabia.
At Khobar Towers, for example, most of the damage and casualties at Khobar were caused by flying debris from the structure and from the glass, etc. And so, based on that, we worked to design things to prevent flying debris and flying glass. At Oklahoma City, the bulk of the casualties were caused by the collapsing structure. So one of the things we studied was how to put redundant capability in a structure to prevent it from collapsing if it was attacked. And so by applying the lessons that you learn from doing those studies, you can better protect structures in the future.
Tough way to learn a lesson.
Absolutely.
But there is an easier way. The Corps of Engineers is making a science of terror, setting off its own bombs. This is the first time the public has been allowed to see the Corps' counterterrorism work at its research center in Mississippi. Reed Mosier is the technical director for survivability.
You've developed a team of specialists that goes to these terrorist strikes as soon as they happen.
We try to get there as soon as we can so we can get the most information of what occurred before they start doing moving things, repair work, or even part of the removal for search. We'd like to get there as soon as possible.
What can you make of these buildings once they've been blown to bits?
We want to find out what performed well, what didn't perform well, try to characterize the size of the bomb, the blast.
What did you hit this with?
With a small amount of explosives.
Mosier also designs his own terrorist bombings in miniature, with exacting scale models of reinforced concrete buildings.
You've modeled this thing right down to the finest detail. You've got what we used to call cinder blocks, these concrete masonry units.
Right. They're actually scaled down to a quarter scale, and we use these in the experiment to build the walls inside of it.
On this day, Mosier's team is testing a common interior wall, particle board, steel wall studs, and sheetrock. It's set in a steel frame with instruments inside.
Right.
Can we have a look?
Yeah, sure.
Whoa, it's close in here. So this is the other side of the wall we were just looking at.
Correct.
This would be the interior of the building.
Right.
We're armed, ready to go.
Once the area is all clear, they set off a bomb. Inside, the destruction is captured in slow motion. They've done hundreds of these tests to create new kinds of building materials. For example, watch what happens to this concrete wall. Now look at the same kind of wall after it's been sprayed with a new plastic coating. The Corps of Engineers runs these experiments through its Supercomputer Center, one of the most powerful in the nation. The computer can test various kinds of bombs against different buildings without breaking any glass.
It's not just a pretty movie, it's an actual calculation.
In a special 3D imaging room, Mosier showed us how the supercomputer recreates the blast wave at Khobar Towers and predicts the path of every shard of glass from a single breaking window.
Just reach up and pick them out.
These studies have helped create a new generation of window that can stand up to tremendous force. This experiment shows how those new windows can be fitted into an old building.
So the window is strapped in. It's like a seatbelt.
Seatbelt, right. That's a good way to explain
And it pops out a couple of feet, looks like, and stops.
Stops, exactly.
What a mess.
The Corps has tested, the hard way, more than 100 window designs.
So what you have here is glass on the outside, glass on the inside, with this plastic sheet in the middle.
Right. It retains all the glass particles, when it's hit, they all crack, and it's actually connected into the frame so that it gives it strength to keep it from blowing in.
The renovated section of the Pentagon had just been fitted with blast-resistant windows.
This is the room that I was looking out from.
U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Vince Cam was sitting next to one of those windows.
I was sitting basically about 3 feet away from the window, and I can see with that loud bang that accompanied as a fireball that came up towards the window.
This fireball, bright as the sun?
Oh, it is much brighter. It's like a stove. If you can imagine turning on a stove, it's kind of like bright reddish orange.
But neither the heat nor the force broke through the windows that were right next to the impact site. The Pentagon's new windows cost $10,000 apiece. No one has counted how many lives they saved.
If I was sitting in the same window on the unrenovated part of the Pentagon, I probably wouldn't have survived it.
Today, Lee Eby's team has finished tearing down the section that they had just put up, 400,000 square feet. So on the order of 10% of the Pentagon is gone. And there goes another half
There
a
goes
percent.
a little bit more. That's correct. Yeah, about less than 10% of the building is being taken down.
This was the Pentagon then, but look at it now. Already the new Pentagon is rising. These steel rods that will support the new columns are being sunk into the same old pilings. September 11th will always be an essential date for the Pentagon. It was September 11th, 1941, that ground was broken for the building. And on September 11th, 2002, they intend to open the new section. What's it going to look like when you have it finished?
You know what it looked like before?
Yeah?
That's what it's going to look like again. Exactly.
They're already pulling the limestone out of the same Indiana quarry of 60 years ago. In Mississippi, the supercomputers are analyzing the September 11th attack to improve the defenses even more. And John Yates has already been told that he will be moving back into the very same office.
It's a testament to the work that the people in the renovation did and the engineers. And, you know, if it hadn't been done, if there'd been no structural hardening, I can't imagine what the death and destruction would be. It would have been more catastrophic than what it is. 10 times, 100 times worse.
And you would have been in that number.
Yeah. I don't ask why anymore. I just say thank you.